Welcome to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. On this podcast, we bring you the very best from today's homeschool leaders to help you start strong and finish well. This podcast is for you. If you have a guest or topic suggestion, email us at podcast@schoolhouserocked.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. I am thrilled to have our guest on today. Her name is Rebecca Kocsis, and Rebecca and her organization hold a very special place in our family, and I will explain to you why that is. But let me first have her introduce herself to you, and then we'll get rolling and talking about some exciting things today. So Rebecca, welcome to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. I am super excited to have you on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Yvette. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Tell us a little bit about you and your family and what you do.
Well, our family homeschooled our 5 children for 22 years. We ran out of kids. They all grew up, so we stopped homeschooling. Our baby graduated in 2006. So it's been 12 years since we've had a homeschool kid in our house. But we're just very passionate about it. God laid it on our hearts to do this back in the early 1980s as a means of discipling our children. Our kids were in public school. That was completely our comfort zone. But we got saved and started learning about, what the Bible says about education and child training, and then really wanted to bring our kids home and disciple them and have their education be completely Christ-centered and a part of our daily living. So we got started and never looked back, and I've never regretted a moment of it. So, and I do work for CHEA right now. That's Christian Home Educators Association of California, and we started volunteering in the 80s for the organization, opening mail, and then we worked as the convention, part of the convention team, and then later we've just served in multiple capacities over the years, and to where now I do serve on the board of directors, and I'm CHEA's general manager.
That is awesome. I said I would tell why CHEA holds such a special place in our hearts. And I know many listeners who have heard our story, they've heard this before, but I'll say it again. 8 years ago, I guess it was a little over 8 years ago, about 8.5 years ago, we were faced with a decision, and we had a 4-year-old at the time, and I was pregnant with my youngest, and we had said we'd never homeschool, and we were adamant about it. I mean, we could give you every reason why we said we would never homeschool, and really what it boiled down to is that we really had so many misconceptions about what homeschooling was. And then we were faced with that decision of what we were going to do with this child of ours who we loved, and we cared so much about her, and we really wanted the best for her. And we always thought, well, we'll put her in private school. I had gone to a really good private school in the town that we lived in. We did not feel comfortable with the public school system that she would have gone into. And so we thought, we'll put her in private school. And I always thought, I'll work and be able to afford this private school that she would go to. Well, then, like I said, I was pregnant. And so we had to make that decision of, I can't work. We couldn't afford the private school. Public school was not really an option for us. Mm-hmm. So I guess we're going to do this homeschool thing that we said we would never do. And it's just so funny looking back at that time. And my good friend Jody, who was actually on the podcast a few weeks ago, she and her husband had homeschooled for many years. And we had, this was only 8.5 years ago. So we had several friends who were homeschooling, and we had started to kind of observe them. And we had started to kind of think, maybe it's not really as bad as we think it is. But I was like, I don't drive a minivan, and I just didn't feel like I fit the mold of what I thought a homeschool mom was. I hated school as a kid. I just thought, why, I hated school, so why would I want to do it more? And God had a very different plan for us. And so I remember talking to my friend Jody on several occasions. And then at one point we were in Trader Joe's, and I ran into her. I saw her all the time, but I ran into her one afternoon at Trader Joe's, and she said, why don't you and your husband come over for dinner? And we were good friends with them. She said, just come over for dinner. Let's talk about homeschooling. I want my husband, Kevin, to talk to Garrett about homeschooling. And she said, and also there's this convention that we go to every year called CHEA. And I remember saying to her, you have a convention for homeschooling? Like, that's really weird, Jody. And because I didn't at the time, I had no idea how big the homeschool community was. And so I don't know really what I expected. We went and had dinner at their house, and they both just talked about the convention and about homeschooling, and we walked away feeling really encouraged. And her husband encouraged Garrett to go to the convention with me. And so we went together maybe a couple months after that, and there were actually several couples from our church that went with us. And in one weekend alone, the Lord completely changed the dynamics of our family through that convention. And,
Wow.
God can change people in many different ways about homeschooling, but ours was that convention. Rick Green was the speaker. He was one of the keynotes that year. And then there were several workshops and sessions that we went to. And I can't even remember what a lot of them were, because the one that I do remember was I went to one where they talked about homeschool methods. And there was this list of them, and there was Charlotte Mason, and there was classical, and there was unschooling, and this and that. And I was like, what are these people talking about? I had such a hard time wrapping my mind around that. But we walked away from that convention completely changed. And all the way home, we talked about how exciting it was. And I remember coming back to my in-laws' house, who had been watching Brooklyn that weekend, and just we couldn't stop talking. We were like, we're going to homeschool. This is what we're going to do. And they were kind of like, oh, okay, sure. And they were, I don't know if they were supportive, but they weren't unsupportive. They just kind of said, okay, well, if that's what you feel like is best for Brooklyn, then okay. And so we went into it. I was scared to death. I had no idea what I was doing. And but I knew, and we both knew, that was where the Lord was leading us. And and so that was the beginning of our journey. And we've gone to conventions almost every year since then. We've been to several CHEA conventions, and then we've been to some other ones as we've traveled around the country. And so the two things I really want to talk to you about is, one of the things that I didn't realize for a really long time was that most states have their own state representatives, their own state homeschool representatives, who really work to fight for freedoms and laws and things like that, but then really support their own local homeschool community. So I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about conventions and the importance of them and how they can help homeschoolers. So I know that was a long introduction, but I want people to know our story and just the great impact that CHEA has had. And it's not just CHEA, because I know we're not the only ones who have had that story. That was just our personal story with CHEA, but there are so many organizations across the country that are just like CHEA that do the same thing. So talk to our listeners about what a state organization is.
Well, your introduction to CHEA was a lot like other homeschoolers. They just come to the convention and then don't realize that that's not all we do. State organizations are working on behalf of their homeschoolers in their state 12 months out of the year. So what CHEA's mission is, and ours is very similar to every other state organization that I know of in the United States. It's to promote homeschooling as an excellent educational alternative to traditional classroom schooling to the community at large, so that we can get the word out to families that are interested in homeschooling, and also other organizations that don't know about homeschooling. And then also to provide training and resources for parents. So we have on our website, multiple pages of articles on how to homeschool. What do you do with your preschooler? How do you homeschool through high school? What if you have a child with special needs? So we try to have training and resources for parents all year long. We have publications. We have books that on high school, driver's ed, introduction to homeschooling. We do what we can to help parents homeschool, help the mom and dad at the kitchen table. We have a home education consultant that just answers questions to about 20 hours a week. We also have an assistant here in the office who answers the phone and fields any kind of homeschool questions. Every day she talks to a homeschool mom or two that says, "Help, I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
So we're there to help answer questions and guide them. And our conventions are a big part of the resources and the training that we provide for parents. And it's probably the most fun and the most visible. I mean, who doesn't love getting together with a couple thousand of their friends, once a year, and you're
Sure.
like-minded people passionate about the same purpose, and, just gathering together and learning together and, just encouraging one another. So that's a big part of that. But probably the biggest thing that homeschool state organizations do is they work to protect homeschool freedom. We work together with other organizations to help influence legislation that may be compromising or a threat to homeschool freedom. When these threats rise up, homeschool organizations are kind of have that footprint or that backbone within the state. So we can mobilize the homeschool families to contact their legislators, to write letters, to make visits in district offices. So we're able to mobilize and round up the troops and get the word out that there's a threat and tell people what they need to do, what they need to say, where they need to go. And then we also continue year in and year out maintaining those relationships. So I think that's the biggest thing. And you probably saw that a lot of press this past year because there were threats in California legislatively, Hawaii, Kentucky, and I think there was one other state in the union. Interestingly, these all of these bad laws came about as a result of some type of child abuse issue. And we know that homeschooling isn't a child abuse issue. I mean, it's, they're two unrelated things, but
Sure.
We know that those that are opposed to parental rights want to use any opportunity that they can to crack down, so to speak, what they might say on homeschool freedom.
Sure.
So that's it in a nutshell. If you can think of the 3 Ps, we promote homeschooling year round. We provide training for families year round, not just at the convention, but we're here, 5 days a week, 5 days a week, every week. And also we work hard to protect homeschool freedom. So that's it. That's what we do in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And I know that you're speaking not just for CHEA of California, you're speaking across the board for state organizations all across the country, because most states, I don't know, is it all 50 states that actually have a state homeschool organization, or is it just most of them?
Yeah, most of them do. Not all 50, but yes, most of them do.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I was in DC at the HSLDA National Leaders Conference. Of course, you and I got to spend some time together there, and yes. I was able to meet so many of the state leaders from across the country, and it's been so neat getting to know them. And since that conference, I've been able to connect with several of them, and really have had my eyes opened to the incredible work that you do. And for some of you, it's, for yourself, you're not even homeschooling your kids anymore, but you're so passionate about the freedom to be able to homeschool and about equipping this generation of homeschool moms like myself, that you put so much time and effort and work into being able to encourage and equip these homeschool families. And I love that. And it seems like across the board, that is the heart behind these state organizations. It's not just a job that you go to clock in and, get that paycheck in the mail. And I know many of you might get paid a very little bit for what you do. But I know it's really more of a ministry actually for a whole lot of you who do this. And you put in a lot of hours into being able to, provide those 3 Ps, you promote, you protect, and provide support for these families.
That's true. And, you talked about, how many state organizations there are. We actually have an alliance of state organizations called the Alliance of Christian Home Education Leadership, or ACHEL, ACHEL.org. And you can learn more about us at our website, homeschoolfreedom.com. But yes, even the state organizations are organized into a national organization. And then we network with international organizations as well. Mexico, Canada. I think we had a Korea and Africa. So yes, and homeschooling is growing globally.
Yeah.
There's a global home education conference that takes place every other year. So it's definitely a tight-knit and very passionate community.
Yeah. Yeah. And you actually have an alliance conference once a year, right? Where you all get together and work together because you better each other. You're stronger together. And so you're not just looking at the narrow picture of just your state. You really all work together to focus on the national community of homeschoolers.
That's correct. We do. We have our conference every year. We try to plan. I say we. I'm not on the planning committee, but it's they try to plan it in conjunction with, in cooperation with HSLDA, so that the leaders can come to one location or one general location. But we do. We network. I mean, it's wonderful to see everybody once a year at the conference, and it's like a reunion. Like a family reunion when we get together. But we are connecting and networking daily, on a daily basis, actually, behind the scenes. Because there's so many talented, brilliant individuals, and everybody is just so generous to share their skills or share their resources, things that they've learned with one another, and it does make each of us stronger. And so, when you have a strong state organization working with other strong state organizations, then you have a great, strong national homeschool community. And that's something else that most of the state organizations do. Is when we talk about strong state organizations, we commit an awful lot of time and resources to leader development. We have leadership gatherings with our different leaders in different regions throughout the state. We'll host webinars for them for, training on how to deal with money issues, or, whatever particular happens to be the hot topic at the moment. We have webinars that we've planned throughout the year. So, and when you have strong leaders and they're there casting that vision for homeschooling, that parents can disciple their children at home. Parents can do a good job teaching their children at home without oversight or without, the experts, so to speak, a credentialed teacher, then you've got strong homeschoolers. And so that's our goal, is to strengthen the homeschool community.
Yeah, I love that. Before you talked a little bit about how state organizations can influence legislation. Can you tell me and I know that it's been in the news and I'm familiar with several of the things that have gone on, especially in this past year. Can you talk real briefly about a couple of things that California has done? And I know we're talking about all state organizations, but just to give a little glimpse of really what you're doing and how you're fighting. Because like you said, this is happening across the country, but since you're in California, tell us a little bit about what you've done in California to influence legislation there.
Well, because we're a 501c3, not a 501c4, we are limited in how much we can do. But what we do is absolutely educate our members and homeschoolers at large about what the issues are. And then we encourage them to take action, write letters, contact their legislators, spread the word to other homeschoolers so that they can know what what's at stake. And I think that's the biggest thing that we dealt with this year, was exactly what is at stake if these pieces of legislation pass. Your Fourth Amendment rights are going to be trampled on, and your right to privacy is going to be done away with. So we can let people know, really, we are we mobilize, and educate the homeschoolers on what they can, educate them on what's taking place, mobilize them so they know what to do. And then, of course, this year for us, it all culminated on April 25th when several thousand homeschoolers ended up in Sacramento to testify against AB 2756. So it's we talked a little bit about how parents can write letters. A lot of families, it's out of their comfort zone. They may not necessarily have grown up in a an environment that focused on advocacy or that focused on, civic involvement. And so we worked on training them how to, send out a little blurb on how to write a letter to your legislator. So that's it. That's how we did that.
Yeah, I love that. And I've gotten some of those emails as well. And it's not just hey, reach out to your local representative or legislator. You actually give them the details. This is the email that you use. This is, a sample of a letter that you can write, or this is a sample phone call you can make. Here's a script that you can use. And so you make it really very easy, but they still have to take that step to be willing to do that.
Right, they do. And I think the letters you're thinking of specifically are the letters from the alerts that we passed along from Family Protection Ministries, because here in California, different states, they have a legislative liaison right within their organization, but we are very blessed in California to have a strong legislative, a lobbyist within the Family Protection Ministries. He works on our behalf. They are not a 501c3. I think they're, I shouldn't talk about their tax status. I don't know. But they are much more qualified to parse out those laws along with HSLDA and their legal team there, and talk about exactly what the threats are and what parents need to say. So so we are in our mobilizing efforts past that specific what to say, who to say it to, and when. Through their information. So we have, the three organizations: Homeschool Legal Defense Association, Family Protection Ministry, and CHEA work very closely together to protect homeschool rights in California.
Yeah, I love that.
So I can't say enough about our relationship with Family Protection Ministry and Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Yes, all very important organizations.
Yes.
And I think most people, again, they don't realize that those organizations are out there really working behind the scenes to make sure that their freedoms stay as they are. When we started filming for Schoolhouse Rocked, and when we started homeschooling, we didn't really realize the history of homeschooling and the fight that there was to make it legal in all 50 states. I think we just kind of took it for granted. We always thought, well, of course we can homeschool. There are kids. Who's going to tell us that we can't? And it hasn't always been that way. And it actually hasn't been that way for very long. And so it's been fascinating to hear the stories from many different states that there were parents who really were threatened in a lot of ways, and leaders who were threatened in a lot of ways. And they just said, nope, we're going to fight for this. No matter what the cost, we're going to fight for this. And so I'm so grateful to people like yourself, to organizations like CHEA and the other state organizations, to HSLDA, to all these different people who have come together as a group and really, really fought to give us those freedoms, but also to keep those freedoms, because there are a lot of people who want to take those away from us.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So talk to me about really quickly why state organizations are important to the well-being of homeschooling and the homeschooling community.
Well, because of the work they do to continue to train homeschoolers and provide resources for them. I think that, and the ability to mobilize, probably the most important thing that the state organizations do that contribute to the well-being, aside from the training or the providing the resources, is the working to protect homeschool freedom. I think we're there to keep an eye out and watch over, so to speak, as the parents are busy homeschooling their kids. I know how all-encompassing that is. And so I think our work on a day-in, day-out basis to keep an eye out for threats, to be sounding the alarm when they come, is probably the biggest thing that we do that contributes to the well-being, because it contributes to the future. It makes sure that homeschooling is legal for the next generation.
Yep. I want my grandkids to be able to be homeschooled. I want my girls to have the freedom to homeschool their kids. How can people help? How can people come alongside of CHEA and all the other state organizations, because of course people listening to this are from all across the country and actually even parts, outside of the United States. We've got people across the sea who listen to this podcast, which is really exciting. How can people come alongside of you and help to keep things running? Because I know it's a huge job that you're doing there.
Well, there are a number of ways. The first is, I don't know when this podcast is going to air, but we're recording it on November 2nd, and that's the National Homeschool Day of Prayer.
Yes.
So obviously pray for those that are serving in the statewide organization. Volunteer. There is no end of need for help every day. We can use help in the offices, and also at events. And if you have a specific skill set, lend it to the organization. Yeah. And also financially. Finances are probably the biggest thing right now for most state organizations. Many of us have a membership base and different levels of membership. So join CHEA or join your state organization, become a member and stand with them. Help create that footprint for homeschooling in your state. And also most of us are 501c3s, so you can make tax-deductible donations and to support the ministry that they need finances in order to operate. So, any kind of gift, if God's laying it on your heart and you're passionate about homeschooling, see what you can do.
Yeah,
financially. Yeah,
that's awesome. One of the things that we're working on right now, we're working with you and several other state representatives and organizers, is that on the Schoolhouse Rocked website, we're going to have a section on there for state organizations, and we'll have an article on there that talks about state organizations and the importance of them. And we'll actually put this recording on there so people can go on and watch this video or listen to the podcast and learn more about them. But it will have a little bit of a information section of it as to what state organizations are. But then what we're doing is we're in the process of putting together a list of all the different state organizations. So people will be able to go to their own individual state, click on their state, and it will direct them straight to their own state organization. And so people don't even have to search for it, because sometimes it's acronyms are huge in the homeschool world. Oh my word.
Right.
It's so funny. We as we've talked to so many different people, there's CHEA and FPEA and Mass Hope and they're just
an AFI.
Yes. The acronyms go on and on and on. And so we'll make it really easy for people. And we're, like I said, we're in the process of putting that together. But people will be able to go to the Schoolhouse Rocked website, click on their state, be directed straight to their organization, and then find out more about what their organization does, how they're supporting their individual states and communities, any events, like homeschool conferences or workshops or webinars, anything like that. They can get all of that information
That's
through that
exciting.
website. So yes, we're super excited about that, because our whole purpose, of course, with filming the documentary and doing the podcast and having the website and having our Facebook page is to really encourage and equip families to homeschool. And so any way that we can do that, that is really our heart. We want to make it as easy for people as it can be. And so this is one of the ways that, as we've met with some of the state leaders, we have figured out will be a really good way for us to be able to help support you, and then you support your own local communities. So we're excited as we're working right now, actually behind the scenes, to get that pulled together. Hopefully we'll have that up in the next couple of months. So whenever people are listening to this podcast, check it out.
That's exciting. Well, CHEA really appreciates the work that you're doing, because, similar missions, you're wanting to raise the visibility of homeschooling and to encourage parents that they can do this.
Yeah.
And, we're right there behind you. So we're very encouraged by the work that you're doing, and are praying for you and praying that God opens doors for you and, prospers this project, because, we're just very excited about it as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's so encouraging. And we have been just unbelievably overwhelmed with the support that we've gotten from the homeschool leaders and from the homeschool community. I mean, it seems like, every week we get several messages from people, whether they're moms who are home with their 3 little ones and they're trying to figure out what this homeschool thing looks like, to those like yourself who have been in this for a long time, and people just excited and supporting us and standing beside us as we do this. And it's, this movie is not about us. It is all for the glory of God and to really open up people's eyes to what homeschooling is. And I think conventions do that as well. I said we would never homeschool, and then we went to this convention and we were apprehensive at first. And when we got there, the thing that I think impacted us, one of the things that impacted us so much, was to just see that it's just people just like us. I mean, they're not a bunch of weirdos. They're
Right.
just moms and dads who are just like us, who are trying to figure out this homeschooling thing. And you've got such a great mix of those who have been in it for a long time and those who are just getting started. And you can kind of see that look on their faces of those who are just getting started with this. I was one of those. They got that deer in the headlights look,
Right.
saying, what in the world am I doing here? But I think it's amazing. I think it's such a blessing what you are doing through CHEA and all the other organizations who are coming alongside of their own state communities to support them. So definitely, to our listeners, check out your organization, get on board,
Right.
help them in whatever way that you can. I get so frustrated sometimes because Christians, they want to sit back and complain about the things that aren't happening. And they're so aloof sometimes. And you just think, get up and do something. If you're excited about homeschooling, get up and volunteer with your homeschool organization. I've recently, I haven't met her in person yet, but recently have come in contact with a good friend. Her name is Abby Ranella, and we've been talking for a few months now. And she is from Idaho, and she reached out to us. She just said, I'm super excited about what you're doing, and I want to help you in any way I can. She's very passionate about homeschooling. And so she actually helps. I don't think she's on the board of her state organization, but she helps them. And she just does what she can behind the scenes. She's got kids at home that she's homeschooling, but she does what she can when she can. And she's done the same for us when, as we've been fundraising and doing all these things, she's just come alongside of us and said, what can I do to help? It's easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it's not like you have to commit to 20 or 40 hours a week. Even if you have a couple of hours a week, get on board and be part of this revolution. That, the title of the movie is Schoolhouse Rocked, the Homeschool Revolution. And it really is a revolution, and people can be part of this battle, or they can sit on the sidelines and let other people fight for them. And it's still going to be a great thing. But I love that this gives people the opportunity to jump on board and help in whatever way they can, because everybody has a gift and a talent that they can contribute.
Yeah, God gave them that gift.
Yeah.
And, the body is stronger as a result of them using those gifts.
Yes.
So, yeah. And it's so much more exciting when you see God doing something and know that, oh, you were in on that. Even, so many people, I call part of our team CHEA, but they just think, oh, we're not really a part of the team. But hey, if they show up at the convention and they coordinate volunteers, or if they help out with designing graphics for us through the year, and they really do consider that it's just my little contribution. But we so appreciate it. And I mean, those are huge contributions to us. And it may just be a couple of hours, but it's so appreciated. And then you're a part of what God's doing.
Yep.
You're a part of the movement. You're a part of that revolution.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So, well, Rebecca, thank you so much for explaining state organizations to us and to our listeners. I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and I mentioned something, and she's in her, I think, 8th year of homeschooling as well. And I said something about state organizations, and she said, what's that? I didn't know that there were state organizations. And I said, oh yeah. And so I explained to her, I said, I didn't know either. And so I'm excited for this podcast because I really want people to open their eyes to that. There is this whole important world out there of people who are standing beside you. They're there to work beside you and to help you and to just walk you through this amazing journey of homeschooling that we are so blessed to be able to do with our kids. So thank you for what you've done. Thank you to all the state leaders who in organizations who work so hard and tirelessly to provide that support to the homeschool community. So we appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you for having me on, Yvette. It's just been a blessing to get to know you and to be able to talk about what we call ourselves state orgs.
Okay.
You know, we talk about those acronyms.
Yep.
You know, talk about what we do and how important the organizations are to the health of the homeschool community.
That's awesome. Well, we're working hard to get that information up on our website. Hopefully, we will have part of it up by the time this podcast airs, but we're working on it. So thank you again. Have a great day, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And we would love to help continue to promote you.
Oh, likewise.
All right.
Likewise.
Thanks, Rebecca. Have a great day. Okay. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye.
I hope this episode of the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast has been an encouragement in your homeschool journey. For great homeschooling videos, articles, giveaways, and more, check out members.schoolhouserocked.com and use the coupon code PODCAST10 to save 10% on any paid Backstage Pass membership. Backstage Pass members get exclusive access to full interviews from the cast of Schoolhouse Rocked and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and leave a review. Until next time, I'm Yvette Hampton, wishing you the joys of community and the wisdom to teach and learn. God bless.